In his frequent speeches about the risks of global warming, former Vice President and now environmentalist Al Gore gives a doomed picture of the future ahead for our planet if we don't take action. Lately, however, his speeches and press interviews have shown some optimism. About 2,000 individuals got to see these signs at the Leader Summit of the United Nations Global Compact. This is a non-binding agreement promoted by the United Nations to encourage businesses worldwide to adopt sustainable and socially responsible policies and to report on their implementation. Al Gore said that he was inspired by the general awakening in our world that 2 years ago brought us the Me Too movement. Today is pushing to eliminate racism and gender inequalities, and literally, at the time of his presentation, brought the U.S. Supreme Court to make it illegal for anyone to discriminate against LGBT.
During his presentation at the Global Compact, Al Gore talks about climate change, but in the context of the current events. And he makes an interesting comparison between the pandemic and global climate change. Here are the details.
But let me put the two crises of COVID-19 and the climate crisis together just briefly in order to look at one of the similarities. Both of them illustrate for us the extreme dangers to humanity of ignoring the best scientific evidence that is available. The scientific community sometimes makes mistakes. Of course, every sector does, but the scientific community almost uniquely has a peer review process that actually values the discovery of mistakes and rewards scientists who say, hold on, you got this part wrong. And as a result of that and the women and men who go into science, we get better results, generally speaking, from science than from many sectors. And when they warn us about a pandemic, we should listen. We should not weaponize the political divisions that some people want to stoke about a pandemic. We should listen to the scientists and have policies that protect the people of every nation and every group. And by the way, the inequality and racism problem I mentioned earlier is certainly on vivid display in the COVID-19 pandemic in my country. And again, we can see similar disturbing evidence around the world. But just as listening to the science is crucial for solving the horrors of this pandemic, listening to the scientists is crucial to dealing with the climate crisis. And actually, these impacts are getting worse. Last year was the second warmest year in recorded history. The scientists tell us that already halfway through 2020, it's pretty certain that this will end up at the end of the year being the hottest year ever measured. Of course, in the oceans, where more than 90% of the heat captured by the global warming pollution goes, the oceans are the hottest this year. They were the hottest last year. They're hotter than ever every single year. And the impacts are continuing. Not only extreme heat, but the climate-related extreme weather disasters cost the global economy $2.5 trillion in the last decade, $1 trillion more than the preceding decade. So these similarities are really important to take note of, but there are profound differences between COVID-19 and the climate crisis. One of them was pointed out by Secretary General Guterres when he said the impacts of the climate crisis are not due to last for years, months or years, as COVID-19, as terrible as they are, they're due to last centuries. And if we don't get our act together quickly, they would last millennia. But the other difference is we have seen in many countries, including mine, the advice to shut down some economic activities in many sectors in order to socially distance and get the pandemic under control. By contrast, the climate crisis doesn't require cooling off the economy, it requires opening up the creation of all of these tens of millions of new jobs in solar and wind and the other sectors that I mentioned earlier. In my country, for the last 5 years, the fastest growing job has been solar installer. It's growing 5 times faster than average job growth. And over the next decade, it's predicted to grow 10 times faster. Second fastest growing job is wind turbine technician. Building retrofits in every country give us an opportunity to create millions of jobs in every community that can't be outsourced. And these are not pipe dreams. These are challenges that are opportunities to restore the kind of vitalism on a sustainable basis in our economy as we begin to recover. So it's a very exciting time, and the trends are very favorable. As many realize, the cost of renewable electricity has been plummeting downward and continues to go down, even as the age of fossil fuels is almost certainly coming to an end. Just this morning, one of the largest oil majors in the world, BP, announced that they are writing down $17.5 billion worth of assets on their books because they're subprime carbon assets, is the way I would describe them. 2/3 of the carbon assets that have already been discovered are not going to be burned, cannot be burned. And it's the most expensive source of energy now as renewables continue downward and as other new innovations take their place. So this is a fantastic opportunity.
To support his views, Al Gore cites a recent study published by the Oxford Review of Economics, in which luminaries like Nicholas Stern, Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, and others showed that green stimulus measures produce far more employment opportunities and, by definition, far less pollution. Green investments, according to the Oxford Review, generate almost 3 times the number of jobs as fossil fuel investments, and they can be implemented very quickly and with significant return.
And by the way, we've learned during the pandemic that the co-pollution from the burning of fossil fuels is a precondition for higher mortality rates under COVID-19, and that's true all over the world. So as we eliminate these co-pollutants, we can improve health, create new employment opportunities, reduce global warming pollution, and give our world an opportunity to move forward toward a safe and prosperous and more equitable future. It also helps to fight against economic inequality because the kinds of jobs that can be created all around the world are going to exactly the populations that need these opportunities. So this is an exciting time. I hope that we might be on the verge of a new awakening, an awakening to the global nature of our civilization, the global nature of the challenges we face, the global nature of our economy, and the new opportunities in that economy that can benefit the people of every nation. But we must have a holistic, systemic change. And again, it's not a pipe dream. This is now possible. It can be done. And for anyone who doubts that we as human beings have the political will to implement such broad changes when we know we must, please always remember that political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you again for inviting me to take part.